You know that moment when the critique is right there, on your tongue, in your thoughts, about to spill out. You catch it, you pause. Now what? That's the moment we're working with today. Because criticism is easy, but responding differently, that's a practice. We experience 1,000 waking minutes on average every day. How are you spending yours? I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and you're listening to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I can't wait to connect with you here with practical ways to eat well, move daily, and be healthy, to optimize every waking minute you live for a happier, healthier life. Thank you for sharing some of your waking minutes with me today. Let's get started.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes. I'm on my way, yes. It's gonna be okay, yeah.
Welcome back to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and I'm really glad you're joining me today. In the last episode, which if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it, we stepped back from something that most of us do without thinking. We took a break from criticism, not because life suddenly got easier or because we don't notice things happening, but because we were willing to pause and look at how often we slip into critique mode toward others, toward the world, and maybe most often toward ourselves. We explored in that episode what I call the CLEAR method. It's a 5-part framework, happens to be conveniently a word also, which sort of magically happened. I didn't force that. But really it helps us catch the moments, let them pause, explore what's underneath them, ask if the criticism is really necessary or helpful, and then reframe or release them. And here's what I want to ask today. So once we've created that space, what do we do to fill it with? What's next? Because if we start quieting the critic and getting good at that, even just for a moment or some moments, what takes its place? Do we just sit in awkward silence? Do we bite our tongues so hard we end up muttering something worse under our breath as we walk away? That's what we're going to explore today in this episode. And it isn't about toxic positivity, about just forcing positivity or pretending that everything's fine when really it's not. But it is about finding some tiny swaps at times, some little ways we can interrupt the habit of criticism and perhaps replace it with something else. Compassion, curiosity, maybe humor. We'll soften the tone a little bit, maybe ask a better question, or even just take a breath instead of a bite. And we'll bring a little bit of that clear back in, the catching it, letting it, exploring it, asking and releasing and reframing. We'll do that. This method isn't just to pause the critical loop that we get circled into, but it helps us start to do something or build something better in its place. And we're going to look at that together. I'll bring in a little bit of science, some language shifts today, and a few real-world moments that might just sound a little too familiar, if you know what I mean. So we've taken a break from criticism, maybe one day, once a month, one day a week, one day a quarter, you decide, one day when you need it. We notice how often it sneaks into our days toward others, the world, ourselves. But we're going to fill the space with something else because, let's face it, sometimes when there's that void, we don't know what to do. One of the things we're going to talk about is self-talk. It's that inner dialogue that's running through all of our minds. Sometimes it's encouraging, and sometimes not so much. And as it turns out, this has a significant impact on our overall well-being. A number of studies have highlighted how positive self-talk can support better psychological well-being. It can improve resilience under stress and even benefit cardiovascular health. That's a physical benefit as well. And it doesn't mean walking around cheerleading yourself, but it means offering a more helpful inner voice when it really counts. But let's bring this to life a little bit, this idea about self-talk and how it can help with a little story, a little personal story here, just brief. A moment where this really showed up for me. I was giving a keynote presentation at a big luncheon. There were lots of moving parts, including a food demo that was going to happen that I was doing on stage, but also some tastings happening in the crowd. And the slides were ready. Everything was ready. We were getting ready. Everyone was coming in. Food was being served. And the conference laptop died. At first, you don't worry about it because you just think something turned off or someone hit a switch. But then we noticed a little bit of scrambling. And this was the main computer for the conference. This was not my computer. It was completely gone, dark, no slides, no visuals. And the tech team was really scrambling. And I had a room full of people getting ready for their lunch on a time schedule and getting ready for my presentation as well. In that moment, I could feel it, quickening of my nerves, anxiety, an inner voice trying to take the wheel, so to speak, like take over. When I should be thinking about my presentation, I'm thinking about tech problems and what will I do next? This isn't how it's supposed to go. This may not land the way I wanted to. I'm not going to deliver this the way that I intended. Maybe I do use my slides too much as a crutch. Maybe I'm panicking, even though I teach just the opposite. But then I stood there, I looked out to the group. I was standing actually on a lifted stage in front of a table. I took a breath and I reminded myself, you know this information. You've lived this content. You can guide, you can present, you can educate without slides. And even more than that, I reminded myself that everyone here is here to hear me, not look at my pretty slide deck. They're here to listen, to be with and in person with another person, and perhaps to learn or be entertained or just have a nice lunch and reinforce many times some thoughts that they have. These were health professionals. These were my peers. But as I shifted the tone in my head and I sort of brought a smile to my inner voice and hopefully to my face, my nerves really started to quiet. I started to recenter and get like a hyper focus. I slowed down and I just connected. And that was sort of the power of self-talk in action. It was purposeful. And it wasn't because it made the tech work. Again, it didn't make the computer magically start, but it helped me work through that moment with a little bit of calm and presence and to come back to center. So that shift in self-talk didn't just calm my nerves, it shifted and changed my entire approach. So it's not about ignoring challenges that come up and approaching them with a mindset that is just like we're going to overcome it, but to foster some resilience through how we shift and how we use our self-talk. And positive self-talk isn't about pretending everything's perfect either. It's about being kind to ourselves, especially when things aren't going well. So how do we practice that? Of course, we catch the negative thought. We let it pause. We explore what it's about, its origin, what's happening. We ask, is it helpful? Or would it be helpful to have this criticism at the moment, to pursue and keep down this path? And then we either reframe it or we release it. And that again is our clear method in action. So instead of saying, I'm terrible at this, maybe we say, I'm learning. It's okay to make mistakes when you're learning something new. A small shift in how you self-talk can really help. It's not about some perfect scenario. It's about progress towards some change. So we're going to talk about what to say instead. Some tiny swaps that I think have some big shifts. When the inner critic comes, either to yourself or to the outward world. Let's say you do pause. You take that pause. You're like, okay, I grabbed it. You catch your breath and you think of maybe the CLEAR acronym that you're getting solidified in. And we're tackling the exploration of this. But now what? Now what? After that, the critical moment. Get that? The critical moment. I just said that. Indeed, a critical moment. This is a critical moment. The now what? What do you actually say instead? Out loud or in your head, wherever it's going? Because let's be honest, this silence that can be created in this pause, the breath, it isn't always satisfying. It doesn't feel like enough at times, and it can make us more anxious. And biting your tongue isn't the same thing as shifting your mindset. Keep that in mind. Sometimes we're like, well, I'll just bite my tongue and not say it. And you sort of stew, and it even gets worse. It's not the same as shifting your mindset. So this next part we're going to be talking about, I have 3 strategies, so to speak, about filling the space gently, thoughtfully, and with a few words that hopefully won't make you cringe or feel fake when you're doing this. So what to say instead when those moments sneak up? We can use language swaps. I alluded to it, talked about it a moment ago, some positive self-talk, but also language swaps in general, some simple human and real examples. I'll share a few that you might relate to, maybe a few that you won't. And I promise none of these will feel like a self-help poster, even though I do admit to liking some of those self-help posters that I see at times. So think about this. Maybe you've attended a meeting and you close your laptop and you go back to your desk, or you get off the Zoom call and you sort of start to berate yourself like, oh, I messed up that, or I fumbled some words, or I could have been more articulate. Now I have my thoughts. I could have been more useful. And you start replaying what could have been in your head. It's like an inner tension and maybe like second guessing. It's a spiral, really. But instead of piling on the critique, you might say to yourself, maybe that wasn't my best moment, but it's just one moment. It's not the whole picture. Here are some proactive things I might do in the future. Or really, now we're getting back to work. Most of us are back into work, and I'm going to take what I got from the meeting and move forward. Maybe as simple as that. Another scenario, you're in your closet or you're pulling out something out of your drawer, you're trying on your outfits for the day, or you're trying on something you haven't worn in a while and you expect it's going to fit. And nothing is feeling right. Nothing is fitting right. Nothing just feels, you're frustrated. Your body all of a sudden becomes the problem. You were just trying to get your clothes on, and now you're critiquing your body in some way. And that can create a downward spiral to a lot of individuals, and it can set a tone for the entire day. Instead, you can use some other words and think, you know what? This is a hard body day for me. We have our bad hair days and we sort of laugh those off at times. This is a harder day for my body for me. I'll wear something that's a little softer and more gentle and gently move through the day. Just shifting some things. Maybe that resonates with you, maybe it doesn't, but shifting a little bit. You don't have to fix it or be rah-rah about yourself altogether. You can be gentler with yourself instead. Or maybe here's another scenario that all of us have fallen into, I imagine at times. You're scrolling. Maybe it's late at night. Maybe it's, a mindless moment when you're waiting for someone to come meet you at a car. You're scrolling on your phone and someone posts a success, a confidence, something they wore, something they said. It just hits you wrong. And you let either comparison or criticism creep in. It becomes like judgment, basically. Who wore it best? We're like trained to do this, like magazines, like who wore it best? And it's like asking you when there's two, beautiful humans wearing beautiful clothing, and they're asking you to choose and therefore critique the other. When you're doing this and pointing it either at yourself or making comparison, maybe one of the things you can say, they're on their path, I'm on mine, and mine doesn't have to look like theirs right now. Or let's find something positive to say. Let's point out some attribute that doesn't allow this brain to walk down the path that I'm seeing myself going toward. Another scenario that we probably all experience at times is sort of the kitchen mess. It might be post dinner, it might be just a day, it might be just, the chaos that is life at times. Maybe you meant to do the dishes, you didn't have time, it's been a long day, and you walk into that messy kitchen, you're like, oh, I dropped the ball again, or I should have done this. Everything just feels wrong because you're looking at a messy kitchen. It seems like it's representing or symbolic of so many other things. I dropped the ball again. Pause, breathe. I'm saying this to myself at the moment. Sometimes this happens to me. This isn't ideal, what I'm looking at, but this is not a moral failing on my part. It's just dinner. It's just dishes. I'm human. We'll get through this. Small shifts. We're not correcting the world with these. And then there's others. It might be your partner, your coworkers, even your children at times. This can really hit a nerve for some. An inner voice that might make you saying, seriously, again? Or it's so unbelievable that this person does XYZ. Or how can this happen? Or maybe it's about you and them. They always do this. Why do I even bother? Or I always do this. Why did they even bother? I don't know. But maybe you can try. You know what? Something's really getting to me. I need to take a pause before I respond. So this can be person to person, or maybe just taking a pause and saying, let me regroup on what I'm tending toward, what I'm anchoring into, what I'm moving toward. Let me see if I can rephrase this. And finally, just one more. This is about taking it back to the beginner's mind, something that I talked about very briefly in the last episode, a Zen practice of, instead of being the expert on, and you might relate to this, at the moment, whatever thing it is, it may not even be your work, your discipline, but you're the one who knows what's wrong and why, the expert. Try to stay open in those moments, the way that the car is fixed, the way someone's pumping their gas, the way that, someone takes out their garbage, all of a sudden you're the expert on how it should be done. And your critic comes out. You may not verbalize it, but you might be thinking it. Remember, we're going to pause and then be curious. Use curiosity. Use the beginner's mind. Approach the moment with a little more, maybe humility, but curiosity. Let's use our curiosity and a little less urgency to try to solve or point out what's wrong with this scenario. Because after all, you're the expert, which maybe you'll chuckle because that's the funny part. A lot of us, when we do that and put those words to it, we go, of course, I'm not the expert on that, but I never really thought to open up to the idea that there might be other reasons that people do what they do, right, wrong, or otherwise, just different reasons. And when you do that, you get to say one of my favorite 2 words, I wonder, instead of, I know exactly what's going on. I wonder. And something shifts. I wonder. It's something my 6-year-old and I try to practice every day when looking at the world, open-eyed and curiously, with curiosity. I guess it's curiously at the world. At times, maybe that's a critical eye coming in, but with curiosity. We literally have it up on the wall in one of our rooms. I wonder, ... And we've got the ... after the ellipsis. So it's pausing, shifting to maybe still but more with why is this getting my goat here? I wonder, why? Can you create some space maybe for a little more grace in that moment? So these are the moments, the little frictions, the quiet corners of the day where criticism slides in without a sound. We don't need to replace them with beautiful rainbows and affirmations, although we talk a lot about rainbows and unicorns in this house, but just with something more honest, maybe something more helpful, a sentence that leaves space instead of silence. So the next tool for your toolbox and practice that you can use, the first one was sort of swapping in words and using language. Now we're going to talk about using gratitude and reframing. And it's another tool that I love. And it doesn't sound fancy, gratitude, you hear about it, but it's one of the most grounding tools that I know. And it really is a good practice, gratitude. This isn't about the fancy gratitude journal with gold pens that you use at night, which, by the way, are amazing. And I really support that and encourage, expressing gratitude as sort of your blessings of the day and what you can be thankful. Those are really great too. But here I mean the simple moments, the kind that can happen anytime when you take pause and on purpose. So it's quiet, it's easy to skip, but it can shift your entire lens if you practice it regularly. Noticing just one thing that went well, maybe in an otherwise chaotic scenario, or a moment that makes you smile amidst other parts of that hour, that day, that meal, whatever it is. Maybe one thing about a frustrating situation. This gets a little bit more tricky, but so wonderful. That's still somehow okay. Something within a frustration or frustrating situation that's still okay. And why is this important? Because research has showed that practicing gratitude actually changes the ways our brains scan for information. So, research back several years, but much since as well, by Emmons and McCullough, that's research that dates back a while, found that people who wrote about things they were grateful for, even once a week, heightened well-being. And in other words, being more optimistic and feeling better about their lives physically and emotionally. And other research has sort of substantiated that further. Big review sort of confirmed this, though they noted that it was more about the frequency and regularity, the consistency of expressing gratitude that really started to show up. More than 4 times was really key to showing up for benefit. So that could be once a week, over 4 weeks or longer. It could be multiple times a day. But it's about the impact on our mood, our mental health, especially feelings of stress and depression, and also our physical and overall well-being, though that's a little bit less clear in the research science. This is about expressing gratitude frequently and consistently and its impact on things like mood, on stress, and physical well-being. So, how do we do this without the fancy journal? How about shifting again or using some of that word shifting and thinking, like instead of this meeting was a disaster, the first scenario I painted above, you might reframe it and say, well, that was messy, but I got through it. Or I'm proud of how I handled that moment. Then you take a breath, and it's always good to take the breath because it helps sort of cleanse and settle you to move forward. So the expression of gratitude doesn't have to shift and be artificial. It's just within a moment, is there something you can be grateful for or identify that you can be grateful for? As simple as that, that went well, or amidst turmoil, is there some saving piece? And even just taking the breath and moving forward is something to be grateful for. So as a final practice, we explored gratitude just now. We explored some language shifts, and you can use those in tandem. Those are more active things you can do after you take that pause or as you're taking that pause. And there's one more practice I want to mention here, and it might be the most subtle of all. It allows us to sort of zoom back out and take that breath, and bring awareness to the moment. And it's simply noticing, being aware in the first place. I could have put this at the beginning as practices, but I actually wanted to put it deliberately at the end because it's good sometimes to come out of the actual scenarios and say, observing what's happening, taking a look at what's happening in your thoughts, in your body, in a moment without rushing to judge it will make some of the tools that I gave you easier to practice. It can slow you down, the pace, and be really the deepest part of allowing us to think about what might come next. Start down the path, either to criticism or other. What might come next? It may not sound like much, but it can be powerful when you notice a critical thought and you don't immediately react to it. you've already interrupted the cycle. Think about that. This kind of awareness is at the heart of many of the mindfulness traditions, like Taoist philosophy. And there's this concept of Wu Wei, it's called, about non-forcing. It's a type of flow. We talked about flows in a different way recently in some episodes, but a type of flow. Rather than reacting to control or change something, a sort of way, not an inaction, but it's sort of referred to as effortless action in Taoist thought, the Wu Wei. And it's learning to move with the world a little bit more with ease, but with intention. So let's think with intention, but a little easier, without overcorrecting or resisting at every turn. And when I think of that, even when I was, preparing for today, when I just think of that, it puts me more at ease. It sounds nice. And research backs this up as well. Studies show that present moment awareness can reduce emotional reactivity and also increase resilience, all by helping us take that pause before we speak or act. Psychologist and mindfulness teacher John Kabat-Zinn, you may have heard of him, has written extensively about this kind of noticing as the foundation for stress reduction and healing, simply by paying attention on purpose and without judgment. So there we have it. We have moved little by little in a few practices through and from critic to curious to hopefully compassionate. Is there hope for us? Yes, I think that there is. What all these practices have in common, the noticing, the language shifts, the quiet moments of gratitude, is that they gently pull us out of autopilot when it comes to criticism. They almost force the pause. They allow us space to choose. And they remind us that if criticism comes fast, kindness can come just as easily once we know where to look, noticing. This is a chance for us to respond with curiosity, I wonder, or compassion, or even just with less urgency, less reactivity, because it's not about walking around being endlessly cheerful, although I do like to be around people who smile, but I like it to be authentic. But it is about being a little more spacious with our reactions. And sometimes you don't have to say something positive to do this. You just have to say something different than the criticism. So when that critical voice creeps up in the traffic, in your commentary of other people driving, in your conversation, even when you're looking in the mirror, take pause. Use the acronym CLEAR, the word I shared. Catch it, let it pause, explore, ask. This may be where you evaluate your options and identify which of the practices you'll use. And R for reframe or release. This is where you choose to respond, whether to respond, how you'll respond, which may be in one of these practices we talked about today. Language, gratitude, choosing to release and let it go. So you might try a language swap, try a breath, try reframing, try asking what else might be true here. I wonder. And turn it into a moment of gratitude related, or even into something else. Just notice how you might make a shift. These are tiny changes, but over time, they sort of soften the hard edges of the day, and they create, very importantly, they create more space in your waking minutes for the curiosity, for more calm, and maybe even a little more joy away from the criticism, and that comes naturally. So before we wrap up this episode for today, I think having a mindful minute together could do us some good and help us anchor into what we talked about today. Help us get to that next place and space where we can start to do something differently, when the move to criticism can be shifted, at least some of the time. And just a reminder also, you don't need to be anywhere special or do anything fancy to have a minute of meditation or mindfulness. You just need your breath and a willingness to take pause. So rest your feet, ground them on the floor. If it feels safe, sort of soften your gaze or even close your eyes. Let your shoulders relax, your hands rest, and let's take one full preparation breath together. In through your nose, out through the mouth, and we'll begin our mindful minute now together. Just breathe. If a thought comes up, let it pass by like a cloud and come back to your breath. Think to yourself, I'm showing up in my life. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, and I'm enough. Take one last easy breath in and gently out. And that's it. One moment shared to pause, rest, renew. Our mental energy can come back into focus and see what's possible in our waking minutes each day. Thank you for sharing that mindful minute with me. So today, we explored what we can say instead of criticism, how to soften our inner voice, how to practice something different, and how those small shifts can really start to change the tone of our day. And when you pair this with some of the things we talked about, like language swaps, gratitude, or even just mindful awareness, noticing, you're not just avoiding criticism, you're rewiring your response system. You're actually creating new patterns in the brain. And this is where science meets the practice, because over time, when you repeat a pattern, catching, pausing, exploring, asking, and choosing a better response, that becomes your new groove. Nerves that fire together, wire together is what neuroscientists say. And you can get into a new groove. And that's not woo-woo, that's neuroplasticity, literally. Our brains can change. And these small intentional practices are the way we help that happen. And I think it's really cool. I hope you do too. And it's definitely worth trying. I'm so glad you spent a few of your waking minutes with me today. Thank you for listening and for practicing. If you found something helpful here, I'd love to hear from you. And I'd also love for you to leave a comment on your podcast channel and send a note or share this episode with someone who might appreciate the pause. You can find me at wendybazilian.com or write me at 1kwm@wendybazilian.com. I'm grateful to you. And I'm Wendy Bazilian, your podcast friend in pursuing a life well lived by thinking about the choices we make during our 1,000 waking minutes each day. Until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to 1,000 Waking Minutes. A huge thank you to our amazing collaborators, including our production and marketing teams, and Gabriela Escalante in particular. To the ultra-talented Beza for my theme music, my lifelong friend and artist, Pearl Price Photography and Design, to Daniel Ballantyne, Jen Nguyen, Joanna Powell, and of course my family, and everyone working tirelessly behind the scenes. And to you, our valued listeners, I so appreciate your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a comment, writing a review, and giving 1,000 Waking Minutes, that's us, a 5-star rating. And please hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Please follow and stay connected at wendybazilian.com. And don't forget to share with your friends. Your support helps us grow and bring you more great content. Until next time, find some simple opportunities to optimize those 1,000 waking minutes each day.
I'm saying yes